Hey y'all, it's Tim. Welcome to Still the Bacon. I'm here with my co-host Rob, and we're here to talk about everything Survivor from Survivor CBS and more.
Yeah, we're here to talk about all things Survivor, give a deep dive into the new seasons that are airing, season currently 6, and discuss what's going on in the game and just share our opinions and thoughts.
Yeah, as we get ready to start, I'm really curious to talk about why Survivor. This is a show that exists in a space amongst many other shows. So I really want to start our conversation off with talking about why specifically Survivor. And I think for me, my heart loves Survivor, but my soul craves it, Rob. Like, I, as a kid, was the person who sat at the front of class, always had his hand raised, would figure out problems pretty fast, but Survivor piqued my interest. I loved watching the strategy that it took to pull off a blind side. The goody two shoes in me loved seeing people get away with a lie, when they weren't supposed to. And just the thrill of going to tribal council and not knowing if you're going to be the person who goes home or if your target is going home is something that keeps the mouse in my brain running on that wheel over and over again and coming back for more Survivor. And I think for me, that's why Survivor is something that I love and something that I find extremely fascinating. What about you?
I think just because it's such a difficult game that can never be perfected. I think that's what speaks to the perfectionist in me because
Mm,
I want to get it right. And I know there's so many other people out there that have this game just drawn to them. I mean,
mhm.
it spoke to me when I was in 7th grade watching Total Drama Island because that was my first dosage of Survivor, right? I fell in love with just the idea of doing the challenges and watching those characters like Owen and everyone. And I fell in love with it. And I would scream at the TV because there was just the obvious threats or the people who I thought were going to win the game. And I was just like, what are you doing? Vote out this person.
Mhm.
And that was missing the strategic part of the game. That is part of Survivor. So when I found CBS Survivor, I was able to grasp that so quickly. And I think that's what really made me fall in love with Survivor, just because it takes all my interest and boils it down into one small little game.
That's beautiful, Rob. I feel you too. I remember watching Total Drama Island, and when I found out about CBS Survivor, I thought, wait, this is a real show? Like, this is a real show, and I've loved it ever since too. I loved it.
Awesome. Love to hear that. So hopefully with our abundance of Survivor experience, we're able to sufficiently talk about and really analyze the game of CBS Survivor. So, do you have anything else you want to say before we get right into it?
No, I'm ready, Rob. 46, let's go.
All right. So, I guess where do you want to start right now?
All right, so we're all watching Survivor, right? I am at this watch party and we have pizza. We're all together. It's like 35 folks. We're in this auditorium room and we're watching Survivor. And the opening scene happens, and we hear this narration that's going on in the background. And before you know it, boom, we see the players. We get to meet them. They land on the beach, and we see Jeff Probst. And to think that Survivor has been going on since 2000, which is the year I was born in, and to be 46 seasons in, I think it continues to be something that's constantly evolving. And I think 46 is no different in that regard. So really curious to hear, like, what's your immediate thoughts about seeing all the players? Did anybody, stand out to you, or did anyone steal your bacon?
I feel like the person that first stole my bacon out of the gate was Tevin. I mean, that first confessional where he's giving the monologue about what Survivor is, how it really is like a microcosm of the world of people coming from all different areas. And then, forced being brought to the island, forced to bond and then vote each other out. I thought it was a great summary. And I saw the passion in his voice immediately. And I think the first observation, or maybe not observation, but the first thing that really hit me, well, actually, maybe before I get to that, did anyone take your attention? Did anyone steal the bacon for you right out of the gate?
Yeah, definitely Tevin too. Like when I say chills, Rob, I mean like chills, like the lines. It felt like a movie. It really felt like watching a movie, and not just because the premiere was 2 hours, but because the opening was that strong. As you talked about, to hear somebody mention and explain so perfectly, I found the essence of Survivor. All these people coming from these different places while still being themselves, while still having to get along with other folks and strategizing and voting each other out. It's like this is the game of Survivor, and this is why we love it. And I think that fact alone is why Tevin immediately stole the bacon for me. Just wow, I'm just captivated.
I think honestly, the other person who really stole the bacon for me was Jeff. For someone who is like 60 years old, he looks amazing, first off. But one thing he said that like really grabbed my attention was how everyone is like living in the facade that everyone
Mhm.
has like the chance to win this game, but in reality that there's at least one of them that has absolutely 0% chance of winning the game, which is just something that he's never said before, because he's always talked about like, oh, you got like a 1 in 20 shot of winning this game.
Mhm.
And like, yeah, these players like on the surface have that 1 in 18 chance, but there is so much that goes into this game that requires you to be successful. Like there are survivor intangibles. And it's true that not everyone has the same chance to win this game. Like maybe it might not be zero, might be a little bit higher because you never know who can win at the end of the game, but
Mhm.
there's so many intangibles that require you to be successful. And it was just great to hear Jeff kind of go against like what he said in the past.
Yeah, like Jeff kept it a buck. Like literally he was like, "All right, somebody is winning. It might not be you." And I think he was so real for that, especially when you think about how hard Survivor actually is. We get the opportunity to just watch it as viewers, but they are on an island, starved, voting each other out. There's only one winner. 19 other people have to lose, either second place or third place or any other number under those. But yeah, and I'm glad we get to see this like more real, more intense version of Jeff that we, have saw in different moments throughout just the whole entirety of Survivor.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And even just speaking of that intensity, we start off the game immediately as they get on the beach, with this first challenge to determine who gets their supplies, who gets a choice between Sweat and Savvy, and who just gets whatever is left, and of course we see the Orange Tribe win. We see Green get second place and they get a choice. Do they want to pick Sweat? Do they want to pick Savvy? Ultimately we see them pick Savvy for different reasons, but I'm curious, Rob, to know if you were on that island, you were in that position and you were the green tribe and you won, what are you picking? Why?
I mean, that's like honestly the first big decision that your tribe has to make. So there's a lot of weight that carries for that first decision because, I mean, as we've seen in the past seasons, it seems to be always two people doing the task together and the other four secluded off to the side.
Mhm.
And I don't know about you, but for me, it doesn't really matter if I do Sweat or Savvy because I'm thinking about I want to make an impression within my tribe. So, how can I reach the most people immediately in the beginning of the game? And I want to be in that group of four people chilling on the bench or chilling on the beach, to be honest. I don't want to be competing in this part of the challenge. Yeah, like the opening supplies matters a lot because you want to go into that first immunity challenge and win. You want to put your best foot forward. Yeah. But man, I just want to make those connections immediately. I want people to feel good about Rob, being around Rob. Like, hey, yeah, Rob's cool. That's the one thing I want them to feel. So yeah, maybe in the challenge, I might be better fit for the Sweat part of the challenge because I might not be the most savvy person. But I'm honestly putting out feelers, seeing what other people want to do, where other people feel most comfortable. And if there are two people who feel super confident in the savvy, go for it. That's perfect for me because then they can compete on the savvy and I can start working on my connections and relationships within this game. But how do you feel about it?
Wow, Rob, I like the way you think. I like the way you think. I haven't thoughts of it like that. I'm thinking about the other tribes, right? If I'm on the green tribe and we win and we're getting ready to pick things, I'm wanting to do what's best to make sure that my tribe wins immunity moving forward. So that way we go into a potential merge or swap with the numbers. And I think because of that, I'm picking the savvy to put the other team at a disadvantage to make them sweat. We're all coming on this island at the same time with all the calories in our body from whatever meals we were having. But for the remainder of the time on the island, we're not going to have all the energy. We're just going to have rice. Even if we have rice, we might just be eating coconuts or whatever we can find in the ocean if we do catch anything. So I want to deplete those resources for those other tribes, especially because they're going to want to put their stronger members out there to do sweat. And if we can get that energy zapped and keep ours, even if we fail savvy and don't have our own resources, at least we lose to a lesser degree. And I think in the game of Survivor, it's all about being not the winner at every round, but to be the least to lose, the least loser, Yeah, not even just tribal councils. You can have the second most votes. It don't matter as long as you don't have the most, and I think being the biggest in the game is what gets you sent home eventually. So for those reasons, I'm picking savvy. And plus, I'm a short king. I'm not about to sweat. 40 yards for somebody is like 80 yards for me. My legs go like this far. So those are the reasons why I'm picking savvy, Rob.
That's pretty valid. And honestly, I think the Green Tribe could have totally followed that logic. And it sounds like they did too. Because, you see that Purple Tribe with Q and Jelinski out of the gate, forced to do the sweat part of the challenge. And that was quite a ride, I would say.
It was.
What did you think about their tribe competing in the sweat part of the challenge?
Man, I think of the people they picked, they were good picks. At least at first, that's what I thought. But, after 7 minutes, I found out that maybe that wasn't the right decision for them. We see Jelinski pretty much give up when they have like 2 hours left. If I'm in that position, I'm thinking maybe we go a little slower. Maybe we just I don't know, have one bucket under the other and just make it work that way. But to give up with so much time left, I think was a big failure, and I think it really hurt in a lot of different ways, not only for the tribe, but for them as well.
I just want to know what he thought was the benefit of stopping then in that moment. Because, yeah, you're conserving your energy, because if it feels like wasted time and you're going to lose, yeah, that can suck. But what kind of perception are you giving yourself, to the tribe? You have Q there, who is an ex-football player who competed at Ole Miss, a D1 college football program, who has worked his ass off his entire life. And that's all he talked about. To the point where it's just you're just going to doom your tribe. It's not the right move to see yourself just give up. It just hurts. I don't know.
Yeah, I know hard work, Rob. I'm from Mississippi too, and when Q was talking about those things that makes him continue to drive and continue to want to compete in a challenge, and to be paired with Jelinski, who maybe he's thinking what you said about preserving energy, but to just throw it all away with so much time left when you're paired with somebody who is the complete opposite of giving up, puts you in a tough position. And yeah, man, it's really tough, and I feel for them. I really do.
I also thought it was super funny when Jelinski was like, "At least I'm coming out of this with an ally," and then just changed so quickly.
Literally, man.
But the legend of Jelinski continues to live on after that moment, for sure.
Definitely.
And then switching gears to the Green Tribe, who picked Savvy. That puzzle looked severely difficult, and I don't think I would have been able to solve that whatsoever.
It definitely did. Like, I don't know if I would have ever thought to put the words that are missing together to then like unscramble it too. But I think they were onto something when they read the note that said the answers that you're looking for can be found below, and I think had we found like that information out earlier, I might have been somebody to just start digging, just randomly just to see if there's anything that could tell us about what numbers to use. Lo and behold, I might have found the actual combination that we needed to solve the puzzle itself and win the challenge. But it definitely was something that I thought was tough, especially on the surface. But they got it immediately with starting to scratch out the numbers that they saw. But with 10 numbers and only a select few being used in the like decoding, it was definitely something that I thought was tough that I might have just gotten right by chance and not by actual means of how it was supposed to be solved. What about you?
Yeah, with that pressure of the time just looming over your head, I feel like my brain would have been just so number oriented, just trying to figure out like like how the numbers fit together if like you're adding them, multiplying them. Felt like I would have tried any kind of combination to that like had to deal with the numbers themselves. And I would have just been so lost looking at that board. And why would it just be a simple math problem for the savvy challenge? Like this is Survivor. We're not competing in a math competition right now, you know? So it is pretty fitting, honestly, that the answer was, what it was with the empty spaces. But I guess that just shows that like, the pressure really can't get to you on the island. Cause like if that is something that like maybe you could have solved outside, like in the like comfort of your own home, just everything is 100 times harder when you get out to the island.
Yeah, you couldn't pay me $1 million to do a math problem on Survivor. Rob, if it were me and you started doing math, I just would have been like, you got it. I'm getting my PhD in English, not mathematics. So I stay far away from that. I don't want no business at all with math. So I think the numbers, again, definitely would have been something that would have threw me off entirely. And speaking of just two people being out doing these challenges, it leaves for the people on the island, and we start to see these conversations happening, these bonds being made. So yeah, do you have any thoughts so far about the conversations that are happening on these tribes and the bonds that are being formed?
Yeah, I mean, right out of the gate, that green tribe, you see, was it Tim and Maria like
Mhm.
bonding over parenthood, which is honestly, I kind of love seeing that because there's something about like, I mean, Survivor players, they are a little ageist to the point where I feel like you definitely got like if you are like the older players, you got to probably look out for each other. Like there is definitely
Mhm.
something there where like the younger players like definitely click in a way where sometimes the older players can't always maneuver themselves into that group. But I feel like kind of with like new Survivor, like from 41 on, you're seeing those like older players really get into the gameplay and they're able to integrate themselves into those like younger people clicks. But I love seeing like those players like bond over the parenthood. And then also to the idea where like within that same tribe, you had like the three players, the three female players, like all start working together. And I don't know, it just seeing
Yeah.
those like slow little moments of like a majority forming, it can always be a good sign, especially if you're feeling comfortable within the first like couple hours of being on the island itself.
Yeah, definitely. Like those bonds are like important in a lot of different ways. And like I personally love to see the girls alliance form, but as we see later, that might make you a little bit nervous if you're Tim. My name is Tim too. I could have been right in his position and thinking about, I love this, but like I'm not a part of that group or Charlie's Angels. I might not have known about Charlie's Angels at that point, but like, you can't help but be nervous, and thinking about just like the bonds and things that are happening on the tribe, we see like a lot of kumbaya, a lot of musicians and music be a part of the season. And I played the trumpet in 6th grade as a kid. I wanted to play the drums, but they didn't let me play the drums. I auditioned for it, I failed, but I played the trumpet and I stuck to it. There's no trumpets out there, Rob, and I can't sing. So I would have been out there trying my best to like make sticks and like try to stick along, try to stay with the group, try to like be in any way a part of like the social bonds and the community that's happening, whether I like it or not, which we see one of the contestants do so far, the counselor from Mississippi as well, Hunter.
Mhm. Yeah, Hunter, he caught my attention in the way where he was very aware of the idea where he felt like he didn't really like fit in. I think
Mhm.
his first confessional in the beginning of the episode was kind of just like he was worried about connecting with others, where, if there's someone that really likes Taylor Swift, he might have a very difficult time connecting with them. And that's, I mean, for me, he wouldn't be so, or he would probably, I guess, then be someone that might not work with me in that kind of way because I love Taylor Swift. That's something that I'm going to be talking about and bonding with Charlie and his angels, I guess, right? Um, but I don't know, it's so interesting because those first impressions are so vital. It creates the foundation of your game, and
Mhm.
everyone's just kind of in a state of like really feeling each other out.
Mhm.
And it's all just about trying to make each other comfortable, and you wanna keep that kumbaya for as long as possible, but in the back of everyone's mind is, "Okay, I gotta make sure that I'm safe for this first vote, the game's on." So, I'm always curious as to kind of figure out or to see, like, when players choose those times of, like,
Mhm.
making that first move and having those one-on-one conversations and telling each other, like, "Hey, like, I feel good about you, like, maybe we should work together."
Yeah, and even on that note, the question about when is too soon and when is too late to start the game of Survivor. But I think that question is so interesting because the game of Survivor starts immediately. As soon as you touch that sand, you're already thinking about other people on your tribe, on other tribes as well, But when do you start to pull people aside and have these conversations? We see I believe Jess be someone who's a little bit slower to start when it comes to talking strategy, when it comes to bonding with people, and it becomes her detriment. If I touch the sand, I fear maybe I'm gonna be too hasty. You know, I might be like, hey, I really liked our conversation about Taylor Swift. Let's, be in an alliance immediately out of the gate just to try to have some sort of like someone to have my back and whose back I can have moving forward, especially if we lose immunity. Like I know you're a big Swifty, Rob. I might just pull out the one or two Taylor Swift songs that I know and ride with that until the end of dawn. You might be talking about her Eras tour. I might be talking about Taylor Swift from 2014 and Shake It Off. But if that's the only bond that I have, Rob, best believe I'm gonna use it and I'm gonna make that be the bond that we have. And I'm gonna talk about it as soon as possible. So that way we're, locked in immediately out of the gate.
Yeah, that was just like was it Ben and Charlie with the Andy Griffith Alliance? Who was it again?
Mhm.
Was it
Yes, I
them?
believe it was them.
Yeah, because it could be literally as small as a TV show, and people are just looking to connect over one small little thing, and that can carry a lot of weight in the beginning because it just makes you feel a little comfortable in that space. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think even just focusing on connections in general is something that makes a survivor player a great survivor player. I think time and time again we see folks who maybe don't connect with others, and being able to connect and adapt with people, I think is just one factor of like what makes a player a great player on Survivor.
Mhm. I think one of the other, like, really important factors is authenticity, to be honest,
Mm,
because people can be as social as like, you could be a social butterfly, right? But you've seen the other winners who people who are kinda timid and they're a little bit shy, right? But if people are able to feel the authenticity, that you're being real with them in those beginning moments, because there's something about, there's something about the idea if you feel like a person's real, you feel what they're saying to you is real, right? They like
mm,
attach those feelings that they feel about you to what you're saying and what you're telling them, right? So I feel like that connection can really jumpstart a player's game, I guess, in a way, right? This just kind of
Mhm.
one of the intangibles where it's like if you're able to be confident and comfortable with yourself, that authenticity will shine, and hopefully the other players just latch onto that at the end of the day.
Mm. I love that, and I think, wow, that really was something that I agree with a lot, but at the same time, I'm finding myself a little bit on the opposite side of that, Rob, and let me tell you why. I think truth in Survivor is subjective. I can be my authentic self, but I'm gonna be the authentic version of myself that best forms bonds and alliances with you. I think to be a good Survivor player, you have to be a good liar too at the end of the day, or you have to be a very good truth teller, and I say those things to be the same. Maybe you're not lying about who you are and your authenticity, but you're telling the truth about it in a way that serves you, in the game of Survivor. And I think being able to not just be your authentic self, but know when to be which version of your authentic self, that really makes a great Survivor player, in my opinion.
Yeah, you're definitely right about that. Kind of figuring out which mask to put on that best like suits the person across from you, right? You almost want to be like a mirror, right? To
Mm,
put on that face that best resonates with the other person across from you. Because if they everyone just looking for someone that they feel comfortable with, that like they feel similar to in some kind of way.
that's
So
right.
if you could be authentic and put that like mask on to best suit yourself and your needs, I hope you're golden, you know?
That's right. And hey, just like we saw in like previous seasons when somebody's authentic self ruffles feathers, maybe you have to change that and grow into the authentic version of yourself that you'll become after Survivor, you know? So yeah, it's all about the journey of Survivor. And speaking of journeys, we did get a journey this episode. Torch, Skull, Vote. We see three folks from three different tribes come together. Jelinski, Tevin, and
Yeah. Yeah.
Maria. Yes, Jelinski, Tevin, and Maria go on this journey, and they're told that between the three of them, one person will lose their vote, two other people will get extra votes. But if you draw the torch card, you have to decipher who has the skull card, who has the vote card, and essentially pick who has the vote card, and your votes will be safe and you'll get an extra vote. But if you have the skull card, you have to lie to get the torch player to pick you so that way you can keep your vote.
You know, I appreciated how like Jeff was trying to change things up from the last couple seasons, right? Because out of the
Mhm,
gate, it's always just like, are you going to risk your vote for the advantage or not risk it, right? Like playing it safe. And I thought this was definitely like a different kind of way to get people to like change their decisions because everyone's preparing for the same kind of journey task ahead of you, right? Because everyone's playing those scenarios about what happened and how they're going to react to it. But this is something different, something that we haven't seen. And to be completely honest, I thought that this journey was kind of lame for whatever reason. Like I
mm,
felt like there's something about the extra vote that doesn't speak to me. I feel like it is kind of one of the lower tier advantages and it's
mhm,
not something that I'm trying to risk my game over. Cuz at
mm,
the end of the day like an extra vote can only break a tie.
mhm,
And that's when numbers are small or maybe like coming out of a merge and you don't really know if you're on the right side of the numbers and everything. But the extra vote, I feel like isn't very powerful. And I felt in that moment, if I'm the player that has the skull, I don't like I'm thinking about like these two other people have the opportunity to have the extra vote, right? And they know, like one of them, the person with the vote knows that I'm the one that's lying. So
mhm,
I feel like in the beginning of the game, I don't want to be someone who is seen as a liar or someone that is
mm,
screwing over that person that has that vote, right? I'd
mhm,
rather be someone who like is kind of looked at. It's like, hey, like maybe I can work with this guy down the road, right? So, I mean, out of the gate for me, when I saw Jelinski immediately lie that saying that he had the vote, It just kind of rubbed me the wrong way just because that wasn't how I would have probably approached it, because I want to be as seen as honest as possible, someone that like you want to work with. And yeah, there's the idea of like you're giving them the power of an extra vote. But for me, like, what's an extra vote? You know, if I have to rely on one vote kind of splitting like the difference between like an ally or me going home,
Mhm.
maybe I just feel like I haven't played a good enough game to get to that point. But that's just so it's just you're just looking at the game way too far if you're thinking that an extra vote can be the difference. In that moment, for me, I'm thinking about my perception of myself and what I'm giving off to these people.
Mhm. Wow, I like that, Rob. And I think for me, I agree that the extra vote isn't something that like determines the future of my game or makes me do these things that involve lying. But I think for me, what changes it is the fact that they might get an extra vote, but I'm losing my vote. And I think for me, that's something that's scary in the game of Survivor. You know, if I'm Jelinski and I pull the skull card, best believe I'm lying, because although it might make two people upset and they go back and tell the tribes, at the end of the day, I think there's going to be other journeys where other people are going to have to create lies and, you know, create this kind of tension between them. And who's to say that these two folks won't even go home and like before we even get to a swap or before we even get to a merge? And I think that losing my vote in this moment on these tribes that are so small that we see within these most recent seasons, especially, um, having your vote is something that is instrumental. And I have this gold card. I was an actor in undergrad. I did theater. I'm using every tool under my belt to lie. I'm sorry. I feel like in that moment, I'm going to be selfish. I'm going to keep my vote because I don't know what the future looks like, not only for my own safety in this moment, in this round, but I don't even know about y'all's future. I might want to try my best to plan for the future and have these bonds across tribes in this moment. But I think in that moment, I don't even know if I'm gonna make it past my own tribal council, you know. And I think it does what you were saying speak to the bonds and alliances that are being made. But I think again, with the tribes being so small and things changing so fast, I think my vote is more valuable. And if I have to lie to keep my vote in that moment, I think I'm lying.
Yeah, your vote is definitely your currency. I guess the way I'm looking at it is where it's like, if you get that skull, I feel like it's a sunk cost in your vote, right? Like any
Mhm,
more lying just could be more detrimental to your game. And also, like, kind of going back to the idea of like looking for the future, like looking into the future for that first vote, right? Those first votes, I feel like are typically unanimous, right?
mm,
So, what is one vote that's not in the urn, right? Like, I guess you can tell people every like that, like you can tell the truth if you lost your vote. You can tell them you still have it, but then don't have a vote. Like you can play it however you want. But if that first vote is unanimous, I feel like you don't need a vote. And if you really need that vote for the first tribal council, either your tribe is incredibly divided or I don't know. I mean, if you need like an idol or a first vote to save yourself in that first tribal council, I feel like you're not that good of a player, to be honest, you know?
mm,
Um, because there's like five other people in a tribe of six, and you can't get yourself like into a group of four. I feel like you should be doing a better job, you know? So maybe in my mind, I'm playing the long game rather than that short game. Um, that's just where my head's at, though. But I mean, at the same time, we're talking about this, and we didn't even consider the other perspective about how our tribe mates would react to the news and the story that we give them. Because when Jelinski comes back, I mean, shit hits the fan for the Purple Tribe. All they're talking about is like, like you're putting yourself like in the shoe to like, be like what I was doing, or saying that I would do of like trying to put yourself in a better perspective for the other players, right? But all we're doing or all I'm doing by that, or Jelinski is doing, is benefiting those other players on the other tribes and coming back with absolutely nothing for their own tribe to use in a potential merge. Because now purple can be extremely outnumbered. And it wasn't even a factor I was thinking about if I were Jelinski on the journey, to be honest.
Yeah, like I think I wouldn't tell the tribe that I just told them that I was lying. I would have been like, "Oh, they picked correctly and I lost my vote and they got an extra vote because of it." Because I think telling the tribe that, "Hey, I gave up after I just gave up this sweat challenge for supplies for the tribe. Now I'm being perceived as somebody who is a quitter essentially or doesn't bring any value to the tribe versus if I tell them, "Hey, I went on this journey, I didn't win, but I tried." It's something that is read differently by the tribe than what Jelinski himself said, and I do think that I am telling the truth to the tribe that I did lose. I don't think I would lie to them about the journey or the game that we played, but I think I would stretch the truth by saying that they picked correctly and why they picked correctly.
Yeah, his lie was pretty abysmal. I mean, it wasn't even a lie. He told the straight,
Oh,
honest truth. And it's just like,
yeah.
I wouldn't have done that. I would have probably done the exact same thing as you. Just be like, yeah, I tried to make them think that I was lying to them, and yeah,
Yeah.
they picked correctly. And
Right,
I
like, "Hey, Rob, I'm not a good liar, they saw through my lie, keep me, you can tell through my lies in the future, I'm a good ally." That's what I would try to frame my telling of the tribe around.
Yeah, he shot himself in the foot. But I mean, at that point, both feet were shot just because of his performance in the sweat challenge and then just coming back from the journey. Like, just not in a great position overall whatsoever.
Yeah, RIP.
Even though, I mean, he did sneak himself into that four-person alliance, like started by Kenzie, like she was
Yeah,
able to who was it? It was her, Q, Jelinski, and
Tiff.
Tiff. That's right. Yeah, they bonded immediately with Jess, who was being like kind of like socially insecure, a little bit on the outs. And then we haven't even mentioned Banu, I guess, but man, he brings so much energy to every single moment. I'm very intrigued to see how he's going to interact with this tribe because he seems like he is like demonstrating like his emotions and his feelings like at 100% all the time. So when he's happy, you see it on his face, right? But I just wonder when things are going bad or like he's feeling those like hunger pains and he's starving if his mood just like does a total 180 flip and he's just like extremely difficult to be around, you know? I just worry about someone whose personality is very, like, up and down, me personally.
Yeah, I feel like it reminds you of a certain co-host, who is somebody who feels very intensely in any direction, and I think that can be good when it's good because you get the tribe hyped up. You get, all of this energy around you and you carry the tribe with that momentum. But like you said, what would it look like when you don't have that going in your favor? Are you now bringing the tribe down because of your energy and your personality? If I'm getting blindside or like an advantage is used against my allies and now I'm just like in this state of doom, I'm like, man, like how do we get out of this? We're going to be next, because I'm feeling so intensely in either direction. And I think it definitely is a double-edged sword. And I think with Banu, man, I just hope that we don't see the effects of what it would look like if that energy is directed the opposite way. We kind of saw a peek at what that might look like when he was crying at tribal council because, you're feeling so intensely, you feel these connections so intensely and swiftly as well. But yeah, I don't know.
It could be a hard like that personality could be like a hard person to ally with too, because when you're trying to like conceal your emotions and like your plans for tribal council, like say Bonnie was talking to someone like on the opposite tribe or like opposite side of the line, right? Drawn in the sand. And you don't want someone to give up your plans or like your motives like through that like body language, those like cues, right? And someone who is so expressive that gives off those feelings like could like give off those like just those bad vibes to someone to like, just catch sense on like what your plan is. So I would be hesitant to align myself with someone like Banu, who is potentially someone who can like give away my plans. Cause I'm someone that keeps their cards to the chest. I feel like I react to how other people play and other people's behavior. Um, I'm aggressive, but I don't want someone to hinder my plans, and someone with that
Mm,
personality can definitely do that.
hmm. Wow, Rob, I might have to vote you out on Survivor 48. I don't know if we'll work together.
Everyone's best motive should be to vote me out first. I firmly believe that because if you just give me one vote, I'm cooking for the rest of the game.
Hey, all right, you got a Chef Rob. That's your new name. Uh, but no, on a more serious note, in thinking about cooking, Tiff is somebody who definitely cooked. Even though their tribe in the challenge was cooked, Tiff herself cooked in finding the Beware advantage, and then subsequently finding the idol as a result of like this series of events that the Beware advantage tasks her to do.
It was definitely great for her that she was able to find it, like, like with Kenzie there, because it locks in that connection with her, especially if they were already two people within that core four alliance they were building at the start of the episode, right?
Mhm.
Um, but I want to hear your thoughts about the Beware advantage before I spew my thoughts, to be honest.
Yeah, like I definitely think it was good that she was searching for the idol with someone else or searching for an advantage with someone else, because I think at that point it doesn't become, oh, well, Tim is dangerous because he's already searching for idols, but it's, hey, we're searching for an idol together. We can use this for our alliance. It becomes less of an individual threat, more of a advantage for the group potentially if we do find it. And I think that's something that was smart, something that I will also do on the island. But what is a risk in doing this is you have someone else who knows about your idol. And time again in Survivor, we see if you have an idol or you have an advantage, don't let anyone know about it. And again, it's something that's a double-edged sword because we found this idol together, but it's mine because I picked up the Beware advantage, but you know about it. So at this point, part of my game is in your hands. I could try my best to tell you, hey, this is for us. We're going to use this together. But if you don't believe me, you know?
Yeah, you're screwed, honestly.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're on the island and you find the Beware advantage, are you picking it up and opening it?
Oh man, Rob. I think if we found this Beware advantage together and I picked it up, I'm giving it to you. I don't want it. I think knowing where it is and knowing that you're my ally and you have it is better than me having it and me not having a vote. Because the trend is if you pick up a Beware advantage, you don't have your vote. And I think that you having it and me knowing about it and me still having my vote is better because I don't know what it says when I open it up. Maybe it says, as we saw, to win your vote back, your tribe has to lose. Who knows? I might have to go swim out in the ocean, dive under coral, and do a backflip until Jeff tells me that that's enough flips and now I have an idol. Who knows what that looks like? That's why it says beware. And I'm going to pass it off and let you take that risk while I get all the benefits of that risk without any of the potential consequences.
Honestly, I love that you see it the same way as me because I haven't talked to someone who actually would not want it in their possession. If I'm alone and I find the Beware advantage, I'm putting it back and I'm
Hmm.
getting someone on my tribe who I know like I feel good about, right? And I bring them idol hunting and I make them search in that one spot. And I hopefully they find it and they open it because it locks them in with me. right? Just like
Yes.
what you were saying, like the person who finds the idol, they're at like the hands of the other person. Like they're extremely vulnerable, right? And what's hard is like, yeah, like you can tell people that like you have the idol and everything. Like that's the trend that we've been seeing, that like you can find in like your majority alliance and everything. But that person that has the beware advantage, that has the idol, is often left out of conversations and can be considered with their name thrown out for a potential vote. And I don't want my name thrown out. I want to be in the conversations with everyone else. So that's what I'm looking for. So I'm trying to lead you into the slaughterhouse, get your
Mhm.
name on the chopping block so then I can talk about you with the other tribe mates on our tribe, and then hopefully build that bond because, we're talking about other people giving us options. And yeah, I can still be tight with you because I'm bringing in like potentially my number one person, just to like make sure that they feel safe with me, and then at that point I'm just letting them do whatever they want, however they want to
Mhm.
handle the vote, because like you said, like information's key. You want that information, you want to know where it is, because that's almost more valuable at the end of the day. Plus you have your vote, right? And this is just a thought that I've had recently, but like this is a little further down the line, but with the introduction of like the knowledge is power idol, like you've seen in like multiple seasons past, that advantages shift hands super quickly, right? Especially with the threat of that advantage being played. So if I
Mhm.
bring someone who is close to me to that spot and find the idol with them, hopefully down the line, that idol isn't played and we get to the point in the merge where, hey, like knowledge is power could be in play. Why don't you just slip me that idol? So now, like here down the line, like there's the chance that like I could just get that idol back in my hands because like I've planted that seed in your mind that the knowledge is power advantage like is potentially in play, and maybe you should just give it back to me, you know? Um, that's
Yeah.
just some scenario that's played in my mind that I think people should use and actually act on.
Yeah, exactly. Like Survivor is a game of chess. I'm gonna make sure that I'm the king piece, you're the queen piece. You need me, I don't need you. You might have the power and be able to make all of these different moves with whatever you have in your possession, but at the end of the day, if you don't have me, there's no game that you can play in the first place. You know, you don't have your vote right now, so you're gonna need me to use my vote in the way that benefits both of us. We're locked in together, as you mentioned before, but if you get rid of me and you don't have your vote, you're a sitting duck at that point, you know? So again, it sort of forcefully builds this alliance, this solidarity between us, and it might not come across as forceful when we decide to do it how we do it, but it's something that at the end of the day is concrete and has a significant impact on like the game.
Mhm. I love though that Tiff's first reaction was just like fuck it, I'm gonna open it. Like I'm gonna play this game. I'm a hustler, and it kind of fits the persona that she is at the end of the day. Um, yeah.
Yeah, it's like I love that for her. Like she's a go-getter, she's about it. She came to play Survivor, and I'm excited to see what that looks like for her as an ally though. I don't know if I want necessarily that person to be my ally. Maybe at the beginning to be, the scapegoat as we were talking about before, but like as a viewer, I'm loving it. As a player, I don't know about it. So,
Yeah, I mean, she
yeah.
seems to have all of those survivor intangibles, the social intelligence, the strategic side of her. She seems like she could be a beast in challenges. I mean, she seems like the total survivor package. So adding an idol into her hands, it's quite terrifying.
Definitely, definitely. And speaking of that idol, they had to lose to even have the possibility of getting her vote back and getting an idol in the challenge. Luckily for her, they did lose. Unfortunate for everybody else, but they did lose the immunity challenge. I'm not sure, if you want to add anything in about the challenge itself or anything that stood out there before we jump forward with purple losing. So yeah, pretty much let's talk about the challenge, Rob.
What did I think about the challenge? I kind of love that how they're just like throwing around that gecko. Um, that'd be impossible to carry. That's all I think about. But I don't know. It was a tough, like grueling challenge. The Orange Tribe was able to get out there. Like it was all about just like tipping the weight over its like medium point on that like obstacle. So
Mhm.
since they were able to get it immediately, it gave them such an advantage on the puzzle. And the puzzle seemed pretty straightforward, to be honest. So it was just like, could you get the gecko over the obstacle? And if you could, like, yeah, you had a clear shot at winning. And yeah, the purple tribe was just not getting it together whatsoever. But it's just like, it might speak to the maybe the lack of communication on that tribe, but
Mhm.
just like the unity that like that orange tribe showed, like in that first challenge, it seemed to have carried, into their time on the beach and obviously into the immunity challenge, just because they were so out in front. Like they had fire, they had everything going for them. So it definitely, like, that first challenge sets a precedent for the rest of that first episode for
Mhm.
how these tribes are going to do. So whether people want to admit it or not, like challenges are like one of the most critical parts of this game.
Yeah, like literally it determines so much, and that's again something that people forget about because if I'm Purple Tribe and we have Jelinski, fool me once, shame on you. Okay, you fooled me, you quit the sweat challenge. Fool me twice, shame on me because you went on this journey. But fool me 3 times and I let you be on the puzzle after you just felt me twice. You fooled everybody at that point, or everybody is a fool at that point, in a sense, to a certain degree, you
Mhm.
know. And of course, we didn't know the extent to which Jess was sleep deprived, but again, I don't think those were the best options you have to put forward when you have a puzzle. I don't know if they just jumped forward and volunteered for it, or if they could have just swapped out to say, hey, now that I've actually realized what's happening, you shouldn't be on the puzzle now. And I think I would have done that and took the risk of being someone who was a little bit aggressive in choosing, who went on the puzzle and who didn't, than losing and going to tribal council. Because at the end of the day, if Jelinski or whomever is somebody that's weak on my tribe, I would rather them still be on my tribe and still be somebody I can bond with and vote with in the future potentially than just get rid of them for getting rid of them's sake, because we can lose again in the future and I can get them out. But if we lose now and we're down to 5, when we go to tribal next, who says it won't be me? You know?
I feel like I mean, everyone's trying to avoid tribal council as much as possible, right?
Mhm.
So when you lose and you go back to the beach, like what are you trying to do in that day before tribal council? Obviously, you have Tiff running off to go get her idol, but like if you're someone like Q or
Mhm.
Kenzie, Jess, like what are you doing? Like what are your keys to success for getting through that first vote?
Yeah, I think the first vote always comes down to tribe strength in some way. Knowing me, if I'm somebody who is performing pretty decent in the challenges, of course I'm gonna go with, hey, I don't think this person brings a lot to the tribe challenges, But again, I'm a short king, Rob. I don't know how to swim that well now. I can just float. So I might be someone who might not stand out as the most physically strongest person in the tribe. So I'm gonna try to figure out what kind of bonds I can make and solidify immediately. And then if it is a conversation around tribe strength, I'm going to try my best to flip how we think about and consider strength to be. Am I the biggest and strongest? No. I might be someone who's keeping the tribe strong with my enthusiasm, with my, personality. That might not win an immunity challenge, but that might get you further into the game. So I'm thinking about all these different things and I'm wanting to pitch myself as someone you want to keep around for whatever reason that might be, as a big ally, as somebody who's strong in a different way, and hoping that that sticks.
It's so hard because the first vote truly is a crapshoot, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You don't have that much time, obviously, to make the bond. So everyone's just going off their first impressions and like whatever has happened in the first 2 or 3 days of the game, right? So hopefully you've built yourself at least a little bit of a nice foundation and a good perception of yourself to carry yourself into the game. But like, there's not much to go off. Just like what you said, like you have your challenge performance and everything. So hopefully you perform well in the challenge and like can throw someone under the bus maybe that like didn't perform well.
Mhm.
But honestly, like maybe for me, like I'm looking at this first vote and I'll take one from Sandra's book, but like I don't care if it's anyone. Like I just don't want it to be myself. it could be like, my closest ally, but like, what's a bond after 2 days? You have
Mm,
26 days to last on this island. And this game changes so quickly. So if everyone is like, having this perception of someone that like is close to you, like, don't rock the boat, like just ride the wave at the end of the day. Obviously everything's different if it's your name that's out there, but I'm just trying to sit back, gather information, and not try to like show my cards of like my true like strategic ability, or like thought, maybe my thought process behind it. Because I don't want, I mean, for me personally, I don't want to scare people into think like that like I'm so into this game, right? That I'm
mm,
thinking through all these different situation, and like this is what I'm noticing, this is what I'm hearing. Like I want to keep most of that for myself and only speak when I'm in agreement with you, just to get to the point where it's like,
mm,
hey, look, like we're doing really good, like talking and working together, like yes, like let's stick with this vote, like stick with each other for this vote. Let's see who else we can get in within our group. And then once you have that group, just let everyone else talk. Because once you get like, 4 people out of 6, everyone should be pretty comfortable at the end of the day. And at least all you need is to hear one person's name. And if you hear one person's name, you latch on to that
that's right.
and you just go talk to everyone else. Because I mean, in a group of 6 people, there's going to be one person who is going to be extremely neurotic. And you know what? I have patience. I'm going to wait until there is one person who is shitting bricks thinking that, like, oh, God, it could be me. And they just spew a name because they're so scared. And that's when I'm going to capitalize and, maybe throw them under the bus, maybe not, but I'll take that information and use it to the best of my advantage. But I think the key to day one is truly patience. Like, wait for a name to be
Yeah.
heard. But I mean, it can be alarming if you feel like you haven't heard a name from anyone, and like you're not having those successful strategic conversations and you're not getting good vibes from everyone. I don't think it's a stupid decision to play your shot of the dark in the first vote as well, to be
Hmm.
honest.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely. Like, especially if the target knows for sure that they're the target. Because if Zelensky didn't say that, hey, I don't have my vote, I don't know, Rob. I don't know if I'm just throwing a vote randomly. I don't know if I'm playing the shot in the dark to not show my cards because I might need it in the future. Although it's a slim chance, maybe I need that chance in the future. And for me to waste it in the very first tribal just to not show my cards, I don't know. I don't know. But I definitely find it interesting the point that you brought about patience because I'm somebody that might accidentally jump the gun and might accidentally put myself out there too fast, too early, but I think I would be wary of somebody who is a little too quiet because I can't read you, and I don't know what you're thinking. And to me, that uncertainty and that not knowing is dangerous because I don't know where you stand. Are you thinking about voting me out? And of course this is not to say that we don't have our bonds or whatever, but if we do, that's different. But if you're somebody that I've just bonded equally to with everybody around me, I'm like, Rob is somebody that I want to keep my eye on. Rob is a little too quiet. I don't like that, and maybe you might not be the first person that's voted out in that round. But that silence is definitely something that I would notice moving forward into the game, as something to look out as somebody who is a little more on the open side, a little more on the forthcoming side, with playing the game a little more out there, a little more aggressively in some ways, socially at least.
Yeah, I mean, silence can be deafening, and depending on how you choose to interact with people, like on a vote to vote basis, like if like the first week, like you and me, like I'm coming to you and we're talking, comparing notes like extremely often, then week 2, I'm my like silent self. Like, of course, your like antennas are going to be up and you're going to be super suspicious of me. So consistency, I guess, is also super important too.
Yeah, and you know, not to jump too far into it, but tribal council, if you're sitting in Zelensky's shoes, Rob, how do you stay? How do you tell the tribe to keep you?
Man, I mean, after putting up that performance in the sweat challenge, then like, hearing those remarks about the decision that I made in the journey, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm falling back on the idea where it's like I probably have to like confide in that group of 4 to make sure that like I feel safe, you know? Because I think that's the only hand that he was really given at the end of the day that like, like gave him a shot to stay, right? So it's probably going to those people that he felt the best with and like reaffirming those relationships, right? So I guess at the end of the day, like my pitch is probably my loyalty because I
Mhm.
haven't proved anything. And the vote is your currency, right? So you gotta I'm probably pitching my loyalty to be honest. But then at the same time, like someone could be like, look, like you weren't even loyal to your tribe before when you chose to give two people in the other tribe the two votes. So it's just like,
Yeah.
shit, like, what can I do? But um maybe you just gotta heart like really just throw Jess under the bus if you're Jelinski in that moment, you know?
Yeah.
Um that's what you gotta do, probably, you know?
Yeah. That's tough, and I agree, I was thinking of it with a similar angle as you, like, and thinking about how can I stay, I think by pitching loyalty is one of the ways I might can stay to say, "Hey, I don't have a vote right now, but you have my vote later," you know, and we might have lost this tribal, but who knows? We might swap soon, anything might change. This is the game of Survivor. You never know what'll happen. I'm somebody that you can trust. I'm not maybe publicly having this conversation at tribal council, but best believe right before tribal, I'm trying to get these people to understand this. If I'm in his shoes and at tribal council, I'm definitely talking a lot about loyalty, longevity, the future of the game to get them to maybe look past my present failures, but imagine and think about our future successes together, and again, just trying to tie each other together in some way. And I think having to throw just under the bus is something that I'll definitely throw in there. It might not be my like priority as a pitch because then she'll just be like, "Well, look what you did. Look at you." I think that's the kind of wager that I'll like wage in that battle.
Totally. And then also speaking to the idea of like, like challenge performance, because we brought that up earlier. Like she's
Mhm,
talking at tribal council about like how weak she is, how she's not even like mentally present, right? So
mhm,
like, yeah, Jelinski like could be like, yeah, like I didn't give my all in the journey challenge or journey challenge, not journey challenge, the sweat challenge.
mhm.
But if we're gonna look down the line, like this game, like our bodies are gonna take a hit. We're not gonna be like fully there week after week. It's just gonna get more difficult. And here's someone who is already like showing signs of like extreme mental fatigue and physical fatigue. They haven't slept, like, and sleep's it's not gonna get more comfortable. You're not gonna be given more sheets or blankets and pillows like as the game goes on. So it's just like, and if you don't want to go back to tribal council, like that's your pitch. Just being like, I am in better shape and I can maybe provide more for challenges in this tribe. Um, but if you don't want to like obviously throw out just like that, it's get a little harder to like subtly kind of throw those words out there, right?
Yeah, 1,000%, and it's tough because if I'm anybody else in that tribal council, I am 1,000% voting Zelensky. So, man, but again, at the end of tribal, we do see Zelensky voted out. Shout out to Zelensky. You were entertaining for the first episode. I really, really enjoyed, what he had to offer there.
It
Had a lot of
truly
fun
did.
watching him, but man, man, those choices.
What do you think about I think one person's like in their strategic sense, right? So Q is obviously very heavy Jess. Banu was like an emotional mess for the most part, and he didn't really seem like he had like a strong sense in like where he wanted to go in the end, just because
Mhm.
his perspective wasn't really shown. But what do you think about like Kenzie and Tiff kind of giving up that control and like just going with whatever Q was saying? Because ultimately Q got his way in keeping Jess.
Yeah, I think at that point for Tiff and Kenzie that they made the right decision. I think that sticking with the tribe, not wanting to fall on the sword too soon, too early for somebody that at this point is expendable, especially with the fact that I have an idol in my possession and my ally has an idol in their possession, you know, that gives us a little bit more power potentially in the future over just losing one person as a vote. I think that if we try too hard to keep everything, it seems like we're trying to have it all. And, you know, you can't have it all in Survivor. You have to get what you get, take what you take, and use those tools to get you further in the game. And I think that if they were to try to have it all, they would have just lost it all in their process.
Yeah, it was really interesting of Q trying to be like maybe not like the loudest person within that group, but like
Mhm.
really, I mean, he pushed hard for Jess, right? So I think it can be. I mean, that's obviously good for him in the long run because he can go to Jess and just be like, "Hey, like I'm the reason that you're still here right now." Like
Mm,
Kenzie and Tiff, they wanted to vote you out. They wanted Jelinski here, but I'm the reason why you're here. So he can like, pull in Jess to the side and keep her like in his back pocket, hopefully, right? But at the same time, it's just kind of like I don't know. You don't want to rub people the wrong way and being like the loudest person for that first vote, I feel like, you know?
yeah, and not to play down Q's ability, but I think right now Q is definitely thinking a lot about just the tribe collectively, it seems like, from what we've seen from him. And that'll be great if he does like kick it up in that way and play that strategic move of building that bond with Jess to say, hey, they wanted to keep Jelinski even after he flopped in the challenge, but I saw your potential, like you were saying. But I think that overall, him getting his way at this point at least was being framed around just the tribe because he had that bond with Jelinski. I think Jelinski would have been more loyal to him than anybody else just because it seemed like they bonded more, especially with them two being the folks who, did the sweat challenge together while everybody else had their own bonds. I think it would have potentially benefited Q more to take out Jess in that moment potentially because he potentially had a closer bond with Jelinski. So I think in any scenario, Q would have came out as a winner. But I'm definitely curious to know what the future looks like with him keeping Jess and not keeping Jelinski.
Yeah, you're definitely right that it totally just could have been a miscue because you never really know, I guess, how Jelinski stacked up everyone else in relation to like Q, right? If he was at the
Mhm.
top of his chart in allies, and then how Jess really viewed Q. Like, who is Jess close to? Like, did you get a sense of if she was close to anyone or having any kind of bonds? Who did she confide in about being like quiet and everything? Like, I don't even remember to be honest from watching the episode.
Yeah, I can't remember specifically who, but I do know like in talking about, her having ADHD and losing things, she definitely bonded closely with Banu. She was somebody who he consoled in. But if I'm Q, that's a threat. That's a problem because Banu is another strong person on the tribe. I might want to get rid of her to keep somebody who might be maybe a little bit weaker in challenges, but is somebody who I'm closer to versus, who's Banu is closer to in that moment.
Yeah, like, why are you crying on their shoulders? I want you crying on my shoulders right now. Like, come to me to talk about your problems. Like I'm the therapist here. Like, let's talk about it. Let's work on that bond right now. Create that therapeutic relationship, because like that relationship, those vulnerable feelings, that's what's gonna actually create that relationship.
Yeah.
That's when like those true bonds really like come through the surface and like truly stick and become like strategic relationships.
Yeah, exactly. A quote I live by: people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And if you're a player who's making another player feel good, feel confided in, you know, that's something that doesn't feel good for me as somebody who's not in that position. So yeah.
And that's also why if I get the skull in this journey, I'm giving the others the extra vote because I did something nice for them, so they will feel warm, positive feelings for me.
Hey,
Just to bring that back.
hey, yeah, if it works out, you're right. Hopefully it's not you. Hopefully you don't need your vote at the first
Yeah,
tribal,
hopefully I'm not the Jelinski, right?
True,
Hopefully
true.
we'll play a better game until that moment.
Sure. All right. So we've gotten through pretty much most of the episode. So I think, Rob, it's time. I think there's this one player, in my opinion, who's been sizzling and who I think stole the bacon. And I just gotta say, Tevin stole the bacon for me in this episode. He's somebody that's charismatic, someone who has an extra vote, someone who's bonded closely with his tribe, and somebody who's genuinely entertaining to watch. And I loved every moment of having him on my screen. I think for me, Tevin steals the bacon. Tevin is somebody that I think can go really far and is in a great position right now. And again, he has my bacon this episode, 1,000%. What about you, Rob?
Totally agree with you. I mean, Tevin is playing a flawless game to date. And even on the Orange Tribe, I know we didn't really touch on it before, but like
Mhm.
Liz already has some kind of negative energy, like kind of pointed directed at her right now, right? Just because of like whatever she's been saying on the beach. And you heard Tevin talk about it, where it's like he's keeping his eye on Liz. And they were obviously able to flawlessly succeed in the challenges. They won back to back. So they're in a great position. They're flawless. I think the person who stole the bacon from me was probably Tiff this episode. I
Mhm.
mean, yeah, she went to tribal council, but she comes away with an idol. She finds herself in the majority alliance, and she wasn't the person who had the loudest voice when making
Mm.
that decision. She was able to ride the wave, go with the flow, really take like that back seat, but really like make sure that she is in a great position going forward.
Mhm.
So hopefully there's momentum behind that vote and they don't go back to tribal council, but at least she knows that she has an idol in her back pocket.
1,000%. And like you said, she has Kenzie too. Like that's a lot of wins in one round. That is a lot of wins. And I think, like you said, she's in a great position. I think on the other hand, someone that I think is burnt this week, you know, outside of Jelinski, I think that Liz is burnt. She is somebody who didn't necessarily create super strong bonds from what we've seen straight out of the gate outside of potentially a girls' alliance on maybe a future tribe or anything like that. She is someone who came across as maybe not needing to be there for whatever reason, and I think that those first impressions are definitely the strong impressions that you want to make. And hers isn't one that sets her up for a good rest of the game, in my opinion.
I think for me, I mean, I totally agree with you. And I think two other people who kind of stuck out to me as like potentially being like the most burnt slices of toast are Tim and Randon. Um,
Mhm.
I thought it was very concerning for Tim, especially when like the whole Charlie's Angels alliance was kind of forming. And, like he sees those girls getting close to each other and he goes to Charlie to be like, hey, like we got to watch out for these girls. And, like us three guys got to stick together, right? It's just like he's definitely making his best move with what he can do with the bonds that he thinks he has. But it's also kind of alarming that he goes to Charlie about it because now Charlie's, forced to be in this middle position where he carries all of that information, right? So
Mhm.
if I'm Charlie and if I'm siding, or if I feel like I'm siding more with the girls right now, I'm very alarmed of Tim just because, and not you, of course. I'm scared
Difference
of Tim
him.
because um I don't want Tim to really catch on to like what's going on. I want him out of this game if I feel like they're gonna like really figure out my strategic plans and then make moves actively against me. So
Mhm.
I would be worried if I were in Tim's shoes right now. And then going back to Randon, it was very interesting how the first like moment we really see with him interacting with everyone on the beach was how he was speaking very when he was talking to Soda about Venus and he was
Mm.
sharing his like if he was kind of apprehensive, but he was also saying like how like, she reminds him of Parvati, who is, the
Yeah.
Black Widow of one of the best, like, in my opinion, like top 3 Survivor player of all time. So, and it's interesting that that was like one of the first few things that we really saw him saying to Soda. And we don't really know if he has any connections right now within his tribe. So maybe his way of like, building the connections was through like sharing Soda being like, hey, like maybe we should target Venus. But if you haven't even like established that rapport with someone or like found your solid alliance and you're already throwing out a name like just like Soda was like she was like kind of terrified about the idea that like Randon's just like absolutely throwing out a name for like a Venus's name like immediately. And it can also be very beneficial for Soda to go to Venus as she did and be like, hey, like Randon's throwing out your name, because all of a sudden you're creating a divide and you're sitting nice and pretty in the middle. And
Scratch free.
as truly. And then but yeah, I would be very nervous if I were Randon.
1,000%.
I also thought it was very interesting how after I think they before cutting to Venus, they cut to a Black Widow, and I love seeing that. And the only energy you've gone from any of her confessionals is the idea that like she's willing to backstab anyone. So Randon is totally accurate, it seems like, in his read and his perception of Venus, but it just was a little too early, in my opinion, to put those thoughts and opinions out there when you're obviously
Mhm.
not in a losing situation right now, because you're in the chill time, you're in the kumbaya time before the challenge, before tribal council. So just live in the moment, keep those perceptions and like opinions to yourself, because you can only damage your game going further.
That's right. Listen, we don't have to go to tribal. I'm pushing P, and that P is positivity. You will not hear me say anything negative about anybody. I'm SpongeBob with like the little rainbow, like everything under the sun. So I feel you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. Rob, how are you feeling? Anything else you want to mention before we say au revoir to our very first episode? Thank you so much for listening to the very first episode of Still the Bacon. So, yeah.
And that's also why if I get the skull in this journey, I'm giving the others the extra vote because I did something nice for them. So they will feel warm, positive feelings for me.
Hey,
Just to bring that back.
hey, yeah, if it works out, you're right. You're right. Hopefully it's not you. Hopefully you don't need your vote at the first
Yeah,
tribal.
hopefully I'm not the Jelinski, right?
True,
Hopefully
true.
we'll play a better game until that moment.
Sure. All right. So we've gotten through pretty much most of the episode. So I think, Rob, it's time. I think there's this one player, in my opinion, who's been sizzling and who I think stole the bacon. And I just gotta say, Tevin stole the bacon for me in this episode. He's somebody that's charismatic, someone who has an extra vote, someone who's bonded closely with his tribe, and somebody who's genuinely entertaining to watch. And I loved every moment of having him on my screen. I think for me, Tevin steals the bacon. Tevin is somebody that I think can go really far and is in a great position right now. And again, he has my bacon this episode, 1,000%. What about you, Rob?
Totally agree with you. I mean, Tevin is playing a flawless game today. And even on the Orange Tribe, I know we didn't really touch on it before, but like
Mhm.
Liz already has some kind of negative energy, like kind of pointed directed at her right now, right? Just because of like whatever she's been sitting on the beach. And you heard Tevin talk about it, where it's like he's keeping his eye on Liz. And they were obviously able to flawlessly succeed in the challenges. They won back to back. So they're in a great position. They're flawless. I think the person who stole the bacon from me was probably Tiff this episode. I
Mhm.
mean, yeah, she went to tribal council, but she comes away with an idol. She finds herself in the majority alliance, and she wasn't the person who had the loudest voice when making
Mm.
that decision. She was able to ride the wave, go with the flow, really take like that back seat, but really like make sure that she is in a great position going forward.
Mhm.
So hopefully there's momentum behind that vote and they don't go back to tribal council, but at least she knows that she has an idol in her back pocket.
1,000%. And like you said, she has Kenzie too. Like that's a lot of wins in one round. That is a lot of wins. And I think, like you said, she's in a great position. I think on the other hand, someone that I think is burnt this week, you know, outside of Jelinski, I think that Liz is burnt. She is somebody who didn't necessarily create super strong bonds from what we've seen straight out of the gate outside of potentially a girls' alliance on maybe a future tribe or anything like that. She is someone who came across as maybe not needing to be there for whatever reason, and I think that those first impressions are definitely the strong impressions that you want to make. And hers isn't one that sets her up for a good rest of the game, in my opinion.
I think for me, I mean, I totally agree with you. And I think two other people who kind of stuck out to me as like potentially being like the most burnt slices of toast are Tim and Randon. Um,
Mhm.
I thought it was very concerning for Tim, especially when like the whole Charlie's Angels alliance was kind of forming. And, like he sees those girls getting close to each other and he goes to Charlie to be like, hey, like we got to watch out for these girls. And, like us three guys got to stick together, right? It's just like he's definitely making his best move with what he can do with the bonds that he thinks he has. But it's also kind of alarming that he goes to Charlie about it because now Charlie's, forced to be in this middle position where he carries all of that information, right? So
Mhm.
if I'm Charlie and if I'm siding, or if I feel like I'm siding more with the girls right now, I'm very alarmed of Tim just because, and not you, of course. I'm scared
Difference
of Tim
him.
because um I don't want Tim to really catch on to like what's going on. I want him out of this game if I feel like they're gonna like really figure out my strategic plans and then make moves actively against me. So
Mhm.
I would be worried if I were in Tim's shoes right now. And then going back to Randon, it was very interesting how the first like moment we really see with him interacting with everyone on the beach was how he was speaking very when he was talking to Soda about Venus and he was
Mm.
sharing his apprehend like if he was kind of apprehensive, but he was also saying like how like, she reminds him of Parvati, who is, the
Yeah.
Black Widow of one of the best, like, in my opinion, like top 3 Survivor player of all time. So, and it's interesting that that was like one of the first few things that we really saw him saying to Soda. And we don't really know if he has any connections right now within his tribe. So maybe his way of like, building the connections was through like sharing Soda being like, hey, like maybe we should target Venus. But if you haven't even like established that rapport with someone or like found your solid alliance and you're already throwing out a name like just like Soda was like she was like kind of terrified about the idea that like Randon's just like absolutely throwing out a name for like a Venus's name like immediately. And it can also be very beneficial for Soda to go to Venus as she did and be like, hey, like Randon's throwing out your name because all of a sudden you're creating a divide and you're sitting nice and pretty in the middle. And
Scratch free.
as truly. And then but yeah, I would be very nervous if I were Randon.
1000%.
I also thought it was very interesting how after I think they before cutting to Venus, they cut to a Black Widow, and I love seeing that. And the only energy you've gone from any of her confessionals is the idea that like she's willing to backstab anyone. So Randon is totally accurate, it seems like, in his read and his perception of Venus, but it just was a little too early, in my opinion, to put those thoughts and opinions out there when you're obviously
Mhm.
not in a losing situation right now because you're in the chill time, you're in the kumbaya time before the challenge, before tribal council. So just live in the moment, keep those perceptions and like opinions to yourself because you can only damage your game going further.
That's right. Listen, we don't have to go to tribal. I'm pushing P, and that P is positivity. You will not hear me say anything negative about anybody. I'm SpongeBob with like the little rainbow, like everything under the sun. So I feel you.
Hmm.
Well, yeah. Rob, how are you feeling? Anything else you want to mention before we say au revoir to our very first episode? Thank you so much for listening to the very first episode of Still the Bacon, where we talk about everything Survivor, CBS Survivor, and everything Survivor under the sun. Again, I'm Tim. Shout out to Rob, our co host. And thank you again for listening and watching. And you can find us on Instagram at. We will put all of that information out there for y'all to grab. But it's been Tim. It's been Rob. It's been Still the Bacon.